I want to have said enough of this little model so that you can take it with you. I'm saying what happens in a living process always happens into. It happens into an implying that's already there, and it does something to that implying. I'm going to say one more little thing if I can. Everything that happens into. It happens into the implying of the living thing. The environment happens into the implying. Now, one little bit more. The implying happens into the implying and changes that implying. And what does it imply? Well, some kind of interaction with the environment. So the next implying implies how the environment will come in. And if it comes in that way again, then it will change that implying into a still further implying of the organism's own implying. So you get what I call a process. I could start the other way and say, what's a process? In this sense, the way I'm using it here in this case, the word process means an occurring into an implying in such a way that it carries the implying forward to its own next implying. And what does it imply? The next occurring. If that occurring occurs into it, then it carries that implying further to the next implying. So you get a process. And living things imply not just the next moment, they imply process, their own process. Well, in terms of this being any kind of news, you know it already. You've got a plant there that you've forgotten to water for a week, and it's sitting there, and it doesn't know what to do, and it's just sitting there, and if you don't do anything, it'll die. But it continues as long as it can. It doesn't do all its living. It only does a minimal amount of living that it can manage. And then you give it water. And what happens? Well, you know what happens. All its living process can come on. The water is what it implied the whole time, but not just the water, but this expansion and that growth and that cell and that other cell. And so a whole living process goes off from this little bit of water that you gave it. Because its whole sequence, its whole process, its whole occurring into implying, so the next implying implies the next occurring into its implying, which implies the next occurring into its implying. The whole sequence goes off. Or you've got some water in a little fountain-like thing outside, and when the birds discover that water, what happens? The most wonderful, most complicated process. They take, we call it, they take a bath. But actually, it's a fantastic dance if you've ever seen it, with the wings fluttering and it's jumping back and forth. And oh my God, what a complicated process a little bit of water can get you. But it isn't just the water, of course. It's that every move that it makes, the environment cooperates in such a way that it can make its next move, which the environment cooperates in such a way that it can make its next move. So there is a kind of perceiving and feeling which happens right in the behaving. The bird doesn't, and we don't need to have a picture and then say, oh, I see, this is like a map of... but already in moving, we perceive, and the body feels the continuity of its own. I won't even say it feels the continuity of its own. I have to say it the other way. The feel is part of generating the continuity. So if all I communicated is that it can be complicated to talk this way, living is always a fresh process. Any living thing is its own implying, And what occurs into the implying and carries it forward, so that any living thing, if you look at it, you can say there's something going on fresh here. It's not a machine. It's forming. It's forming itself. It's forming its body, or some aspects of its body, freshly now. That's what living is.